Testing. Testing. Are we live on YouTube? We should be live on YouTube now. And we should also be live on the other site. Mixer, that's its name. Mixer, that's its name. Where is live dashboard? There it is. That's muted. Fantastic. We'll be starting in just a sec. Sorry, guys. We are running slightly behind schedule today. That's partly my fault.
How dare you?
I know. I'm sorry. Actually, are you a bit too bright on your end? Maybe you are.
Yeah.
If you want to try and turn yourself down on your end.
Yeah, I thought that was the case. And I was just on TD Ameritrade. And
the brightest man alive. Daniel
how's that?
Rubino. Let me see. Yeah, that's fine. It'll do.
Is it still too bright?
No, it's fine.
All right.
Don't think people will care much.
My hair's been cut off.
Hello, Mixer. Mixer is here. We have exactly 28 people listening on Mixer. That's nice to see. Who do we have on YouTube? 12. We have even less on YouTube. That's a surprise.
And it.
Oh, no, 44. It literally just jumped up. Never mind.
I'm sending out the tweet there.
Cool.
It is sent.
Cool.
You are mentioned.
Oh, nice. That's nice. That means I can retweet it straight from my phone without having to open Twitter. Or my new Surface laptop. Look at that.
Let me mute.
Oh, let me do my voice recorder test. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3.
My color's a little bit off today. I blend too well with my shirt. Let me just lowering my camera a bit.
Someone's asking, did I eat supper? I haven't eaten yet. No, I don't usually eat on Fridays.
Supper.
Supper's
so dinner is like what regular people eat.
Yeah.
Supper is what old people eat.
That's true. I don't eat supper. I have dinner every evening.
I joke
Channel
with
1 is hosting us straight away. At least you're here at the beginning instead of the end this time, Channel 1.
Thank you, Channel 1.
Yeah.
All right, I guess we should start talking
yes,
then.
we should. I'm ready to go when you are.
Okay, I am recording.
I am now recording as well.
Get the little thing up. All right, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 153 for October 25th, 2019. Hey everyone, Daniel Rubino here, joined with Zach Bowden for another exciting episode of the Windows Central Podcast, where we talk all things Microsoft, Windows, gaming, Surface, and well, my voice cracked there. I was so excited. That's why. It is Surface Week, so we have a great show planned here. We're going to be talking about, of course, those Surface reviews, specifically Surface Pro 7 and Surface Laptop 3, both the 15-inch, and now we have the 13-inch, and Zach even has the 15-inch Business Intel version. So we'll have a cool discussion about that, but first we're going to talk about Microsoft earnings. I know, not that exciting, but it was a good quarter, so we've got to mention some of those numbers and what it means, because there was some bad news there for gaming, but overall, Microsoft did very well. Zach has some Windows 10X news / clarification / updates that we may want to learn about. Even I don't know what that is. So that should be exciting. Plus, Zach will share with us some news on 19H2 and 20H1 releases. What's going on there specifically? That's the November update for Windows 10, which has been in testing for a while. And of course, the spring 2020 update, which is coming in spring. Plus, we'll take your questions at the end of the podcast. So save those if you can for later. We'll maybe try to answer some during the podcast, but we usually like to do that afterwards. But if you have a really good question, maybe we'll take a look at that. Otherwise, Zach, how are you doing on this fine Friday?
I'm not too bad. I've just been having a great time playing with my new laptop. I know you've had quite a busy week, or weekend rather, writing those reviews up.
Yeah, I had 5 days with the two devices, and I left my house once. I shower twice.
Wow.
I know I probably
Gross,
should have
Dan.
shared this info. I'm not a big guy. I'm skinny. Skinny guys, we don't smell. But still, I didn't go to the gym all last week. I probably packed on a couple pounds. It was exhausting. And people love to remind me of just how exhausted I was in video by going, damn, you look really tired. Which is just never what you want to hear in comments when you see
Lovely.
yourself in video. It's like, you look terrible, by the way. It's like, oh, I guess I'll work on that. Thank you.
Mm.
I have recovered a little bit though, so it was a rush, and we'll probably go through it again. We still have the Pro X to review. I don't have it. I'm not under NDA at this point, so but I don't have one, so I'm not reviewing it at this time. But that goes on sale November 5th, so presumably we guess November 4th will be the review deadline, but we just don't know yet. So, but we are going to review that obviously because.
Does that mean you're going to be bringing it to Ignite?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I get to touch it.
So when I go to Ignite, I'll probably. These are all really fun devices. I mean,
you're going to bring all of them.
Well, I won't bring the 15-inch because I'm not a fan of the 15-inch.
No, I know you're not.
But and part of that's just the size, but definitely Laptop 3 and Pro 7. I mean, I love these, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So yeah, it's been a busy week. We're still going through. I just posted today. If you haven't checked it out, I kept going on the reviews about Instant On and what that is. And I posted on Instagram a real world example comparing it. So go check that out because it's a game changer. And Zach, you can share your thoughts later about this too, because I know it really impressed you. But yeah, I mean, it's been an exciting week as always for Surface stuff. And now I've just been told I'm getting the XPS 13 with the Comet Lake chipset in there. So I'll be having to review that. I still have some Lenovo ThinkPads to review. It's a great quarter for laptops, unless you're me, because it's just nonstop work. But anyway, let's get to revenue.
You want to go revenue first, or do you want to do the Windows 10
let's get
stuff
revenue
first?
Let's go revenue first, since it's
Okay.
like eating your vegetables first.
Yeah, it's true. Go for it, Dan. I hate earnings. Is not my thing. I just turn off when earnings happen. I just don't care.
Okay, so let's see. I haven't memorized these numbers yet. So let's see. They're up. They revealed 11.1 billion in rev for its more personal computing division. That's what you guys probably care about. More personal computing includes Surface, Xbox, Windows 10 for consumers, as well as Windows 10 for enterprise and business. And so that's all there. That's the classic kind of Microsoft stuff. And it represents actually about a third of the company's revenue. The other stuff comes, of course, from AI, Azure, which also had a bang-up quarter. We're talking double-digit growth for revenue for almost all these divisions, which is really nice, except for, more personal computing was up 4%, but it was, and this is the important thing because we had to explain this to Asher Madden, who's a doctor but not a financial guy. So when you see these numbers and you see it's like up 4% or down 5%, and you think, oh, that's bad, that's terrible. And then you're like, why is the stock going up? So the important thing is when you're reading these numbers, there's two things. There's the actual numbers, but then there's always, after the numbers come out, they do an earnings call and they take questions and explain things a little bit more to investors. But what they always do towards the end of that call is guidance. That is what they project for the next quarter. And this is really how companies are judged these days, which is it's about what you expect. And you have two options there. You can make a projection, say we're going to do this next quarter, and you meet that. Investors will be happy. Or you can make a projection, say we're going to do this, and you beat it. Oh, I mean, investors love that, right? Or you could make a projection and you fall below that. And investors hate that. They don't want that. They don't want uncertainty there. So the more you can make a projection and meet it or beat, that's fine. So the thing is, with the more personal computing division, having it only gained 4%, which isn't a lot, but it was in line with what Microsoft was stating was going to happen. Same thing with gaming. They saw a decline in console sales. We don't get the actual breakout for that number, but we don't need to. We saw a pretty big decline there, and that's because this current generation, the Xbox One, the One X, is long in the tooth. We all know next fall we're going to be testing and buying the brand new Xbox, which is going to be faster. That'll be detailed, of course, at E3 in 2020. But we're in a lull right now. And the fact is, consoles are kind of plateaued in a lot of ways. A lot of people buy them. They're super cheap now. And so what it is, it's more about who are buying the games. It's about the revenue coming in from services like Xbox Live, Xbox Game Pass, and Game Pass Ultimate. And so Microsoft's still doing well there. It's just the hardware is kind of lagged. But again, that was in line with their projections. They told us in July, we expect to see a decline in gaming because of the consoles. And sure enough, that's what happened. And in fact, is the bigger news, they expect even a bigger decline next quarter. I believe 20% decline because of this stuff. Is just, we're in that weird lull state. So that may not sound good, but they're already telling investors, this is what we're expecting. These are the reasons why. And if that's what happens next quarter, investors are going to be very forgiving and be like, hey, that's what they told us will happen. Of course, the rest of the guidance is, for cloud and Azure. And I really don't want to go into that too well. We'll just say that Microsoft's hybrid cloud solution is a big winner for companies. They're doing very well in that. It's because of the hybrid cloud. If you don't know hybrid cloud, there's not cloud, and then there's hybrid cloud. Hybrid cloud is for companies who are a little bit more conservative, but do want to go into the future. So it allows them to keep part of their existing infrastructure while also moving some of this stuff to the cloud. And really, Microsoft does this the best. And it's once everybody gets to the cloud, it's this segment of the market for the bigger, more conservative companies that's really important. And that's why Microsoft does so well there. So, the numbers were overall very good. Surface declined slightly, still well over. They made last quarter, I think it was 1.3 billion in revenue. This quarter is 1.1 billion. So it was a small decline. It's still over $1 billion. And I think that's kind of where they want to, have the Surface division, basically. Well over $1 billion. It sounds a nice round number of revenue, right? But this was pre-October, right? So This was for the summertime. We all knew new devices come out in October. So you always see a little bit lull. This is just the PC market in general. And so we expect next quarter is going to be the real interesting one, right? Because you got the new Surface laptops, you got the new Surface Pro X will be really interesting to see how that does. So combine that with the holiday season, let's look to the next quarter. That should be really interesting. And Microsoft is expecting an increase in revenue there, as one would expect them to report. I'll also say the PC market in general is still plateaued a bit. It's declined a little bit for Microsoft. It's funny, enterprise doing very well. That is enterprise licenses for Windows 10. That's because Windows 7 is coming to an end. Companies are buying new laptops and hardware to leverage Windows 10. And so those sales are going up. Microsoft expects that to continue a little bit through January 2020, probably to February, maybe even March. So there'll be some trail off there. But my prediction, and summer 2020, you're going to see another kind of lull in the PC market as companies have upgraded. The consumer market will be basically flat. Intel's had a tough quarter this year meeting demand. That's a good problem to have. In other words, a lot of companies are ordering chips from them. The bad news is they can't deliver those chips, which means PC sales go down. So Intel needs to fix that. This has been a problem with Intel for a while. Microsoft has kind of thrown Intel under the bus a few times here with this stuff. Again, what's going to be an interesting story, Windows 10X, the new Lakefield processors from Intel, whether or not they can even meet the dates for that. That's what powers Surface Neo. These are next-gen platforms, supposed to be very powerful core-type systems. That stuff, along with Windows 10X and new form factors, kick off in late 2020, which means we won't see its effect until first quarter 2021. The question is, does that bring up PC sales again or reinvigorate this category? Remains to be seen, of course, but that's what we have to look forward to. And that's my summary.
Nice. So the TLDR is Microsoft made money.
Yeah.
They made money.
a lot of money. In fact, they beat expectations
Oh
again. And
boy,
so
there
again,
is an AMD fanboy in the chat. Sorry, keep going, Dan.
it's, uh, but that's what, yeah. So basically, Microsoft set expectations. They beat them. Microsoft has a history of doing this. I think it's like 17 quarters now where they've said we're going to do this, and they've actually beaten it, and beat also the estimates on Wall Street. So this is why the company is doing pretty well. So, and Intel, I should also point out, did their numbers yesterday. They also reported beat expectations. Part of that is because they have a very diversified portfolio now. Their actual PC stuff was down a little bit because they couldn't meet those demands, but it was in line with what they were kind of expecting. But their server stuff was doing very well as AI and 5G. And because they're diversified so much, they don't have to worry so much about of a PC market, or even the China trade war is going to affect. But we'll have to see it until next quarter. Speculation is that a lot of Chinese firms bought up Intel processors for their servers in anticipation of this trade war, which means next quarter we could have a little bit of a overextension in that market, and you won't see as many purchases. So we'll have to kind of see for that.
I have seen a lot of gamers sort of latch onto the whole 20% decline in hardware sales for the next quarter. I don't think a lot of them understand why that would be the case. I think a lot of them sort of think, oh, is this the death of Xbox? Is this because no one's buying Xbox anymore? No one's interested? I think you hit the nail on the head where I think it's more the fact that we know that the next generation is right around the corner. In fact, Microsoft has announced the next gen Xbox. And a lot of people, most people outside of our sort of tech or gaming bubble, aren't, they don't have all the money in the world. They can't just splash out on every new console that gets released. So if you're an Xbox fan and you have an Xbox One S at this point, you could have spent the money on an Xbox One X, or you could save your money and wait for the next gen Xbox at the end of next year. And I think a lot of gamers are doing that now. They're no longer spending a lot of money on the current gen Xbox. They're waiting for the next gen Xbox, and they want to put their money down for that one instead. And I think that makes sense. So this is why Microsoft is predicting a 20% decline in hardware sales. But Xbox itself is making money elsewhere with services. This is kind of the whole point. I think Phil Spencer himself has said a few times now that, hardware is not our primary goal anymore. We're not trying to sell the most consoles. We're trying to sell services to everybody. Things like xCloud, your Game Pass, all of that good stuff. But people can buy subscriptions, and that's how Microsoft is making money through gaming now, just by gamers buying subscriptions and sort of a Netflix style subscription service where gamers can just play games whenever they want to. Now that's not a great answer for hardcore gamers, because hardcore gamers obviously want, the most power on a local console that they can find, which Microsoft will still provide. Obviously, the consoles does still exist for those people, but Microsoft doesn't see that market as the primary moneymaker for Xbox anymore. There's a much broader market that they can be targeting when it comes to more casual gamers or gamers who just want to play on the go, xCloud, the preview launched last week, I think, so we haven't actually talked about it on the podcast yet. Me and Dan, I believe, are both in the preview, and my first impressions of it are, it's actually not bad. There is a little bit of latency there, but after about 5 or so minutes, you get used to it and it just feels fine. Like, I can get headshots in Halo, for example, and I'm not complaining. If you're an esports gamer, you won't be using this service. It's not for you. It's for more casual gamers who just want to sort of play whilst they're on the go, play a single player
Which
story.
is where, that's where like such a huge part of the market is, right? It's the casual player,
absolutely,
not the pro players, which are important. The pro players spend the money, but the consumers have the numbers.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess my question, of course, putting this all into perspective, if we're expecting this, decline in hardware because next generation and also other external factors, including game streaming and people are using their phones and even a Nintendo Switch, will we see the same effect for Sony? That's really, because if Sony's like, oh, we did 10% higher, that's bad, right? So it's really about context. We don't know. I haven't been following Sony going on here, but that will be an interesting comparison because they're basically in the same situation at this point. My hunch, though, is I think consoles, and I can be careful here because people are going to get mad. I think consoles are sort of like desktop PCs in the sense that we have a lot of them. People are basically happy with them, and that market is kind of plateaued a bit. You will see bumps and the next generation stuff. You'll see people, of course, buying those, but consoles are very common, and they're also competing with our phones, our laptops, our desktops, our Nintendo Switch. We have gaming everywhere. Now you have people, cloud streaming is way too early to be a part of that, but obviously it's on the horizon, which will only complicate the picture more. So I think it's really interesting. But yeah, we'll have to wait to see what Sony says about its expectations for next quarter too. But Microsoft doesn't seem too concerned about it. So we just have to go there.
It's just fuel for the Xbox versus PlayStation fight that gamers are constantly battling. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, Xbox 20% decline, Xbox failed. Which, technically this generation Xbox did fail. And that's why Microsoft has pivoted so harshly towards services instead of console sales, because they know that they can't compete. I think PS4's at like 100 million console sales now. At least it's getting close. Xbox is, I think, maybe like 40 to 50 million. It's half what PS4 sold this generation. Xbox got annihilated in the hardware sales front.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's why they've pivoted to services so much. But I think, are you done with earnings, Dan? Is that everything?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we can.
Cool. Let's move on to some more interesting stuff. Let's start with some Windows updates, because it's been a while since we did a podcast. We didn't do one last week. So a few things have sort of happened here and there. I've heard some new information around Windows 10. Nothing too huge, but I figured I'd give you all an update on the latest ongoings with Windows anyway. So starting with some sort of scheduling and dates around Windows releases and whatnot. So the 19H2 GA, the sort of RTM release of 19H2. We already know 19H2 is RTM'd. Microsoft announced it a couple of weeks back now, I think. But the general availability of this update, I'm hearing, will be on November 12th. Now, this isn't too surprising. November 12th is Patch Tuesday for November. And Microsoft does like to sort of roll up these updates into one day. So if it's update day, hey, you now have a feature update to apply as well. Except this time around with 19H2, as you'll know, if you're running 19H1, known as version 1903, this won't be a huge feature update like previous ones have been. It just sits on top of 19H1 as a sort of security patch that introduces a couple of new features here and there. So it makes sense for it to roll out on November 12th. So if you're wondering when 19H2 will be available, look for November 12th. That's when I'm hearing it will come out. On that same week, I'm also hearing the first manganese build of Windows 10 for insiders will roll out to the skip ahead ring. Manganese, for those who don't know, is what we believe to be the release coming after 20H1. So Microsoft has now pivoted back to sort of elemental code names for Windows. So they were doing Redstone for a while, then they went pivoted to 19H1, 19H2, 20H1, which was sort of like a more formatted version of the code name. Now they've gone back to sort of using weird names for Windows developments, and Manganese is the one coming after 20H1, we believe. And I say that because we don't actually know yet if Microsoft is planning to do the same thing Microsoft did with 19H2 with 20H2. In the sense that, is 20H2 going to be like a patch that just sits on top of 20H1, or will 20H2, known as Manganese, be a full release? We don't know yet. So for now, we don't know. So Manganese will be a build that comes to insiders that same week as 19H2 goes to GA to the public. Also, I heard that Microsoft is planning to bundle the new Edge with Windows 10 20H1. So Microsoft is expecting Edge to be ready for stable release around at the end of this year or early next year. And then Microsoft will be shoving that into the operating system. So when you install 20H1, the new Edge will be there by default. And I think that's how Microsoft is going to get usage numbers up for the new Edge. Because I think right now, Microsoft, the last time they mentioned numbers for the new Edge, it was 1 million, which isn't a lot. But it is still in beta. So it makes sense that not many people are using it yet. So hopefully we'll see the new Edge stable in 20H1. I do think we'll see an Edge stable release separately before 20H1 is RTM'd as well, so Windows 7 and Windows 8 users can go and download it. But yeah, if you're wondering when the new Edge will be in Windows, that's 20H1. And the most interesting thing I heard is that Windows 10X is going to RTM alongside 20H1 as well. Now, that's interesting to me because Windows 10X isn't coming until the fall, holiday 2020, but that's what Microsoft said regarding the Surface Neo. That doesn't mean OEMs themselves can't launch Windows 10X devices before that. Lenovo came out, I think, last week and said, oh yeah, we're expecting our foldable to launch in the summer of 2020. And that would make sense. If Windows 10X is RTMing in the spring alongside 20H1, from the springtime onwards, any Windows 10X device could start shipping. And it sounds like Lenovo is going to be one of the first to do that because they did claim theirs would be the first foldable PC. And I think they're trying to stick to that. So that's very interesting. And that also lines up with what we were hearing before with, Windows 10X is a spring thing. We're expecting it to be done in the spring. And that still is the case here. Windows 10X is, at least for now, scheduled to be done in the spring. And then, of course, there will be 20H2 or the Manganese release, which sort of comes out in the fall of next year, which will improve things further, likely as a day one update for the Surface Neo and whatnot as well. So that's sort of the latest I'm hearing on the development front when it comes to Windows and whatnot. The Windows 10X stuff I think is quite interesting, and it's more interesting now because today, and I don't know how this happened, a bunch of screenshots from an internal wiki that Microsoft has detailing Windows 10X sort of leaks online, and there's not a lot of huge new stuff here. It just sort of gives us internal insight over what Microsoft is, or how Microsoft is thinking when it comes to Windows 10X. It reveals a few things such as the name of the new start menu. So the start menu on Windows 10X isn't called the start menu, it's called the launcher, as is similar to Android. And they sort of talk about how it's better and how it's more fluid, etc., etc. It also reveals a bunch of default apps that we can expect to see inside Windows 10X. Now, I don't think this list is final, and it's also weird because it lists the same apps a couple of times. But in case you're interested, the apps we can expect to see bundled on Windows 10X include Edge, Mail, Calendar, the entire Office suite, which includes Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote. Also Microsoft Teams, apparently, Microsoft Whiteboard, To Do, the Photos app, Store, a modern file explorer, so Windows 10X does have a UWP file explorer. Spotify and Netflix is apparently bundled as well. Obviously, then we've got Camera, the Solitaire app, Calculator, Alarms and Clock, Movies and TV. Then we have the Office Hub app as well. So the entire Office suite is here on Windows 10X out of box, which is very interesting to me. There's also Sticky Notes, Paint, Learning Hub, Settings, Weather, Snip and Sketch, Voice Recorder, Groove Music, People, the Win32 version of Notepad, Feedback Hub, Media Plans, which is a new app that I've never heard of, the messaging app, which is for devices with LTE, so they can receive sort of data updates and whatnot, and up to 4 OEM apps. So if I'm reading this correctly, Windows 10X will be limited to 4 OEM apps that get downloaded from the cloud instead of the however many is on Windows 10 today. Also, the start menu will support folders because it's a start menu, of course. And that's basically it for the inbox apps. Now, a few people have said to me, oh, so Skype and your phone are bundled. And I will say, I don't think this is a complete list. I think this is just sort of most of. I think Skype and your phone will be bundled with Windows 10X. I'd be surprised if it's not. And a few people also asked me, so is this the Win32 version of Office, or is this the UWP apps? As far as I'm aware, it's the PWA apps, which is a surprise to many, but Microsoft is building out PWA versions of Office for Windows Core OS devices that are sort of shellified in the sense that they tap into the native Windows UI much more than the current PWA apps do. So that should improve performance and whatnot. And I believe these will basically replace the Office mobile apps, which are UWP on Windows 10 today. Let me see if I can just look through here, see if there's anything else worthy of notes, because I've sort of skimmed these already, but there wasn't too much here. The internal documentation does confirm what I've been saying about Windows 10X being an operating system for more than just foldables. They do mention clamshells, which is a laptop, and how the Windows shell can adapt depending on whether it is on a foldable or it is on a laptop-based device. So that's pretty interesting. Good to have confirmation there. There's also a quick settings menu, which is essentially replacing the Action Center. It still houses notifications and whatnot, but when you click on the date and time down in the bottom right, it will open up the quick actions, which has your quick Wi-Fi, tablet mode, etc., etc. Except it won't be tablet mode on Windows 10X. It can list them here. It has a list. Wi-Fi, cell data, input language, compose mode. So compose mode, for those who don't know, is desktop mode for Windows 10X. Compose is what they call the laptop mode. So when you click on that, that will sort of make things operate in Windows and move things to the corner and make it feel more like Windows 10. Then there's obviously Bluetooth, airplane mode, rotation lock, project, do not disturb, accessibility, mobile hotspot, battery saver, and location. So nothing too huge there either, nothing like groundbreaking. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I'm hearing so far about Windows 10X, and this documentation confirms some additional information, which is nice to see. The taskbar, for example, can be left aligned, so in the renders we've seen so far, it's all centered, but if you're running it on a laptop, for example, you can put the running apps and the start button in the bottom left of the taskbar, just like on Windows 10, if that's something you prefer. And that's basically it for now. So yeah. Nice.
That was boring.
Yeah.
Well, Windows 10X will be a lot of fun. I went to the Microsoft store this week to pick up the Surface Laptop 313 because Microsoft aren't sending those out to reviewers. And I always say I'm just going to walk in and grab something. But of course, once they find out who I am, we end up having really in-depth discussion. So I got to educate some of the store staff about Windows 10X and the Windows 32 subsystem and how it works. And they're really, I did not know that. And, they're told what Microsoft wants them to know, which is the public facing. Here are the basics without going into really deep analysis of it and stuff like that. But this info, which is the way it kind of technically should be, customers shouldn't. I know like a lot of people in this audience are like, but does it do this and does it do that? But the short answer is, yeah, it does everything, right? It's just Windows 10. So don't worry about all the details. We get to the details because that's kind of our job, and we're interested in that stuff and how it all works. I mean, after all, Windows 10X is different from Windows 10. So
I mean, so when Microsoft says it's just Windows 10, technically true, but also technically not true. It's very much not Windows 10. It's very different under the hood. It's Windows Core OS, which is I think we've been talking about for ages. So when Microsoft says it's Windows 10, I'm like, okay.
Well, the kernels are the same.
Sure, yeah, it's still Windows NT.
Yeah. Well, there's layers that are overlapped with core components of Windows 10. So it's the UI that's different and some other
it's much more
aspects.
secure, for example. Like the user, for example, doesn't get access to system files, so you can't open File Explorer, go into the Windows folder and delete System32. That's not a thing you can do anymore. Because just like on iOS, the user is sort of siloed in its own partition, so you can get access to your user data, pictures, documents, downloads, etc. But you cannot get access to system files, like app files or the OS files, because you don't
and that's the way a modern OS should be.
Absolutely, I agree.
So that's pretty good. But oh well, we still got a year to figure it out. So
we do.
Do you want
to talk about the Surface Pro 7?
Let's talk about Surface Pro 7. It was funny because obviously that October 2nd event from Microsoft was a really big event. And, of all the things there, we said even before that event, we said, of all the stuff they're going now, Surface Pro 7 will technically be the most boring. And it wasn't like a negative really against it. It was just that they had so much exciting stuff to announce that was sometimes newer that it would overshadow. That said, I got the Surface Pro 7. We did the review of it, and I'm kind of just blown away with it. Now, Zach said, it was funny. He was like, well, of course, you love the Pro 7 or the Surface Pro. And technically, that's not true. I've always been fascinated by them. I always thought they were kind of cool, but they never worked their way into my daily workflow where it's something I would grab, partly because I always had a laptop around that I just found more powerful or had better battery life or something, or didn't hiss when I was using it. But it was around Surface Pro 5 where I really started to come around to it because they weren't running super hot anymore. They started getting rid of the fans. It became more reliable. Battery life has never been great on the Pro series, but it started to become a lot more acceptable for me.
Yeah.
And so when I got the Pro 7, I just every generation just gets better and better. And let's talk about the cons first, right? First con is it doesn't look like the Pro X. And we explain or, express why we think that is, which is, they want you to look at the Pro X and be like, but I kind of want that device. And they want people to buy the Pro X because if it looked exactly like the Pro, I think it would be a tougher sell. But right now, when you look at the Pro X, you're like, oh, it's thinner, hair lighter, but the bezels are slimmer on it. It's got a larger display. Like there's a lot going on. It's got that cool pen. Yeah, it's like, they want people to buy it and try it out. Maybe next year, Surface Pro 8 will bring it more in line with that design. That said, actually, there's a lot of people, and I'm part of them, that look at the Surface Pro 7, and I have really no issue with the way it looks, because when you're using it in person, it just looks and feels great. But yeah, sure, if it came with thinner bezels, slightly larger display, I'm sure it's not going to complain. But what's really impressed me here is, of course, the 10th gen Intel stuff it's a very strong processor. I did the benchmarks. I basically said, this year's Core i5 model, which is fanless still, and that's important, is more powerful than last year's Core i7, which had a fan. And that's huge because you can now buy just the Core i5 version, which is what I recommend for most people. And you're getting a very fast chip on here. Like it's just that and the new Iris Plus graphics give it that little extra push. But then it's the little things like the instant on, which I talked about earlier. Basically what this means is a typical Surface Pro laptop, after I believe 6 hours is the default, goes into like a hibernation mode. You know this. If you've used any laptop PC or even a Surface Pro, you come on, you open the keyboard, screen is black, you got to hit the power button, and then it Surface comes across the screen or the Microsoft logo, and then you'll see the little spinny dots. It's usually about what, 5 to 10 seconds
Hmm.
of that. Then the Windows screen comes on, then Windows Hello kicks in, and then it logs you in. The whole process can be about 20 seconds.
So that
Some,
so that was one of the reasons why I hated Intel on tablets. Like the iPad, for
yeah,
example, is always when you tap on the home button or the power button, it's instantly on and it's instantly there. And Windows 10 on ARM was the sort of the original savior here for Windows that sort of stops that. You know, the Surface Pro X and the Galaxy Book 2 and all the sort of Windows 10 and ARM tablets that we've had so far, they're instant on as well, just like the iPad. They go into sleep, and when you hit the power button, they're instantly on and instantly there to sort of start working and whatnot. But now Intel does it, right?
yeah. So, I mean, it's a combination of Intel and what Microsoft has done. I mean, like, for instance, the new Intel 10th gen has Thunderbolt 3 built in. Does Surface Pro 7 have Thunderbolt 3? No. So, does the Dell XPS 13 2-in-1 7390 also has Intel 10th Gen 10 nanometer on there? Does it do this instant on thing? No. Why that is, I'm not really sure. But there's something to do with the combination of hardware and the software and something else that's going on there that makes it work together. All I know is it's brilliant on the Pro 7. Basically, up to 72 hours. It takes 72 hours before it'll go into a hibernate mode, basically that deep state sleep. Otherwise, if you put your Surface Pro down on the couch, you go to sleep, and 9 hours later, you pick it up. All you do is you drop down that keyboard. It's already turning on the display. By the time that keyboard hits the table, your face will already have logged you in. It's that fast. I put the video up on my Instagram, Daniel_Rubino. You can go watch it there. We have the archive on Windows Central. It's also in the video reviews. You can see how fast it is, but it really changes the experience of using the device because you want to use it more now because you're not waiting. You just pull down that keyboard and you're in the work. It's so good. And I'm surprised a lot of the reviews didn't make a big a deal about this or highlight it and all this kind of stuff. Or maybe it was just they didn't know. This is a difference, I think, between sites that just cover Microsoft or Surface and Windows versus the higher tech blogs who don't follow the nuance here. But it's a big deal. And if you're wondering, of course, now about the battery life of that, the battery life is actually still really good for that feature. In other words, after 9 hours, I lose, I think, about 4% on the Surface Pro of battery life, which is actually really good for standby time. Now, someone's asking about battery life on Surface Pro 7 is worse. I think it is slightly. First of all, the battery is slightly smaller, which is interesting.
Oh, really? So they shrunk the battery this year?
Yeah, a
Why
little
did
bit.
they do that?
I believe it or not, the 10 nanometer chipset thing is actually not smaller.
Oh, really?
So it's actually a slightly larger board. It's a hair larger, but I don't know what's going on there with that. Maybe they needed more thermals. The battery life, what I can tell you is this. It depends how you use it. If you're going to use apps that use the Iris Plus graphics, the Iris Plus is a big power draw. So I noticed when I played video games on it without on battery, yeah, I lost something like I think it was like 8 to 10% within like 10 to 12 minutes, which is pretty fast,
That
right?
is really fast, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so you can imagine you can kill the battery like in an hour or 90 minutes, depending on the game. Um, and that was without headphones. I was using the speakers. Speakers do take power too, actually. HP's told me about this. They're like, when we do the battery test, like it matters if you're plugged in with headphones or not. Because, and they say that because they tend to have 4 speakers that are amplified, right?
Yeah.
So that amplifier uses power. But yeah, but if you're just using it for web and email and Office, it's actually not that bad. I don't know. To me, it feels like a Surface Pro. Like I can't say it's noticeably worse, but it really depends on how you use it. But in our battery rundown test that we use with 3D Mark 10, or sorry, PC Mark 10, it's called a Productivity Modern Office. It uses a combination of web browsing, video calling, and Office use with idle times in between, as I feel like you're just not using the computer for a few minutes. And yeah, I mean, it was 2 hours less. It was 8 hours. It got 8 hours on that test, but that was the same Surface Pro 6 with an i5 got like almost 10 hours. So there's probably some truth to that. But the benefit here, you get Type C now. with the Type-C power delivery. You can take a portable battery with you and plug it in. It uses fast charge through Type-C as well. That means you can plug in a 65 watt. I've been plugging a 90 watt into it. It charges very quickly. Surface Connect, of course, now Surface Connect Plus has rapid charge. Was it 10 to 80%, I think, in an hour? It charges very fast. It's like, I mean, it delivers, right? So not ideal, but when you pick it up and use this thing, seeing how fast it is, and I don't know, I feel like I'm really, really happy with it. I keep grabbing this device and just using it all the time. Keyboard is great. There's not a lot of other changes. Now the wireless switched from Marvel to Intel. That's a big deal. A lot of people hated Marvel, and so that's a big change. So it's using the Intel AX201 chipset, I believe, which is a Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5. So that works very well. But not a whole other lot of changes. But it's all these little things I've added up to, DDR4X for the RAM now. So that's the low power version of DDR4. So that helps with that battery life a little bit and the instant on stuff. And I forgot what the whole list is, but
you reviewed the i5 version, right?
Yes.
So I'll be curious if either the i7 or the i3, because there's an i3 this year as well, I believe,
Sure.
Has better or worse battery life compared to the i5.
Yeah, surprisingly, it's a good question because the intuition there, of course, is that an i7 is going to use more battery. But again, it depends how you use it. Because if you're using the i7 with the CPU or GPU at 100%, yeah. But you could also argue that the i7 will open your app faster. So it'll peak and open the app and come back down faster than the Core i5. Right. So it spends actually less time running. So it makes it really complicated because these things scale and ramp so quickly now that there's no two instances of people having the same battery life, which is what makes battery estimates very difficult.
Also, do we know if the i3 version has the instant on like the i5 and i7s do? Because it's a dual core processor, the i3, right? Or is it all core now?
I don't know. You're right. It is a dual core, so that's important to keep in mind. It's cheaper. It's up to $749, which is a pretty good price. It's supposed to be a good performer, but yeah, it's still dual core. I would assume that this still has the instant on. I can't see how the cores would matter there. It's still a 10th gen Core i3. Now we'll talk about complaints. I still have some issues. No Thunderbolt 3. I threw that in there. It doesn't bother me on this device, but listen, I get it. People think it should have Thunderbolt 3 or appreciate it. It does have Type-C 3.1 Gen 2 with DisplayPort 1.4. Now, if you know what that is, congratulations, and you should know why then having Thunderbolt 3 isn't that big of a deal. If you don't know what that is, well, welcome to the world of technology reviews. DisplayPort 1.4 is a new standard. It's fairly new on the market. In fact, I don't think there are actually any Type-C dongles with DisplayPort 1.4 support yet. They're supposed to come end of this quarter / into 2020. That technology, DisplayPort 1.4, is what allows a single Type-C port to deliver dual 4K at 60 hertz. So you can plug in two monitors, but you only need this either a dongle or a hub with DisplayPort 1.4 to enable that feature. But yeah, it can do it. It's a pretty powerful, it's basically the most powerful Type-C you can get without being Thunderbolt 3. The only thing you lose from not having Thunderbolt 3 is an external GPU, technically. There's more bandwidth, so technically you can plug in more things with that Type-C, but for most people what this actually translates is you can't use an external GPU. That sucks, but as someone who has an eGPU, I mean, not many people are buying these things, right? It's still a very niche thing, but I get it. Like in an ideal world, we'd have Thunderbolt 3. No LTE option. There should be an obvious reason why, right? They want you to buy the Pro X if you want LTE. But, if Microsoft said, hey, we made a Surface Core i5 version with LTE, I mean, I'd buy that, right? So that's not good. The display is still very good. It's one of the better displays on the market. It just looks really nice. That said, no Dolby Vision or HDR 400. Now, I know I get a lot of the video guys of HDR 400 isn't real HDR. I get it. It's fine. Real HDR is ideally 1,000 nits, right? We're not there yet for laptops. But if you use a laptop with HDR 400 certification, that is, it's over 500 nits of brightness, and you have Dolby Vision, yeah, it makes movies a little bit nicer. You get really dramatic contrast. It looks cool. Again, like Thunderbolt 3. I'm never going to not use HDR if I have it as an option. And I bring that up because Windows 10 supports wide color gamut apps and games and HDR stuff built in, and this display technically doesn't support it. You can also claim it, be mad it doesn't support OLED. It doesn't have an OLED display. I'm going to leave that on the table. Some people don't like OLED at all. It's a preference thing. So that's.
I would be curious if an OLED screen would improve battery life on the Pro 7, because Windows isn't really that well optimized for OLEDs. I mean, it has a dark mode, but most of the time the dark mode is just a darker gray and not pure black. So I don't know if it would improve, because doesn't OLED use more power when it's fully on compared to an LCD? I don't know.
Because OLEDs can go brighter typically.
Yeah.
So, but they also can control the brightness per pixel. So yeah, when blacks are on, blacks are basically off versus an LCD where you're still just having the backlight. I think OLEDs can actually be pretty power efficient, but again, that's getting to some minute details about how you use the device. I also complain about the anti-glare thing. This isn't the most glossy screen I've used recently would be the Huawei MateBook X. Their screens are just super glossy, which what bothers me. These are glossy. I think they're too glossy. I think companies like HP, Lenovo, Dell are all investing in anti-glare technology. That is, it's technically a glossy screen, so you get the accurate color reproduction and it looks good, but it's just like your eyeglasses where it just cuts down on reflectivity. And that's important because when you're staring at a screen, especially a smaller one for an extended duration, glare affects that. Glare, because your eyes will refocus and get distracted by the glare. So you actually get eye fatigue. And that's why we want anti-glare. Plus, it just looks cooler and better. So I wish, for all the stuff they do with displays, I wish they would have done something there because they need to catch up. Because it's not that the Surface Pro 7's display is bad, is that the rest have gotten so good. And that's the market, right? So I like to see them do a little bit more work there for next year. But other than that poppy red color, that is just hot with that laptop cover and pen. It looks so nice.
Mm-hmm. So I will ask you, if you're a Surface Pro 3, 4, 5, or 6 user, which one of those should be upgrading and which one probably doesn't need to?
I mean, a 3 or 4 user should definitely. Yeah. If you're coming from a 5, let's say if you're coming from a 5 or 6, I think it's all pretty much improvements. Although some 6 users would claim that they tend to get better battery life. But I would say the overall user experience, especially the instant on stuff, the faster CPU, really kind of, I don't know, it makes it a really enjoyable experience. And Type-C. The Type-C is awesome, man, because I just use whatever plug I have around now instead of having to worry about my Surface Connect. So it comes down to your wallet. If you can sell your existing Surface Pro and get good money for it or something, sure, but if you're coming from a 5 or 6 and you get this, I don't think you'll be disappointed. I think you'll be like, damn, this is even cooler.
Right. If I was a Surface Pro user, I'm not, because I don't actually like the form factor that much. But if I were, I would be upgrading to the Pro 7 purely for the instant on and the fast charging. They're the two big things for me. Like, from the Pro 6 to the Pro 7, that's worth the upgrades for me. But that might not be for everyone, and that makes total sense as well.
Yep. So, go check it out now. Go read the review and let me know what you guys think. All right, let's do Surface.
Let's get to the controversial one. This is the one I've been waiting for. Dan hates the AMD guys.
Don't say that. So not true at all.
No, I'm joking.
No, AMD is a very good company. They have a bright future for 2020, especially. They're kicking Intel's butt in desktop and server, or at least making a lot of inroads there. But when it comes to laptops, they're not particularly well known, at least in the premium ultrabook market. They're known in mid-range right now, and even they're very scarce. I wrote an article, I think a week or two before this announcement, when the rumors are building up about them switching to AMD for a laptop. I was like, but why? And a lot of people got mad at me. But I'm like, listen, I've seen these chips. I talked to these companies. They're okay chips. That's about all we can say about them. And then AMD did their thing, Microsoft did their thing on October 2nd. And even I was like, oh, wait, well, maybe there's more to it here, right? Maybe it's because it made it sound like, we got custom chips.
They called it the Surface Edition.
And I was just like, oh, well, I didn't see that coming. That changes things, right? I'm like, they worked with AMD for custom chips on the Xbox. So like maybe this is that. That's cool. All right, sign me up. And then we all got these, and to put it, they're okay. I would say it's disappointing. It's disappointing from this perspective. The way Microsoft and Panos on stage sold this thing. It's the fastest laptop in its class at 15-inch, and it's 2.5 times faster than this. And the my expectations were one thing, but what I was reading from other people, especially the AMD stuff, was like, oh, this thing's gonna be awesome. You think I can game on it? And what about rendering video and 4K? And it sounded like this was gonna be more like Surface Book 2 area, range. That this was gonna be like a real GPU and it was gonna be really cool. And then a lot of us got it, and no, it wasn't that. It was, first of all, the benchmarks show, and my buddy Brett Howes at Anantech confirmed this, as well as other sites, that the Ryzen 5, which is what we were given to evaluate, performs slightly worse than an 8th gen Core i5. Not a ton worse, but that's what your benchmark is there. It's roughly like a Core i5 from a year or two ago. The 10th gen, though, from Intel will absolutely blow it away. And that's in CPU performance. Mm-hmm. Where AMD has its strength is in Vega. So the Vega 9 GPU here. And it's true. I mean, in the sense that it beats UHD 620 from Intel, definitely. And it even slightly beats an Iris Plus from 10th gen. So that's cool. But again, it's about perspective, right? This is not anywhere close to like an MX 150, or at least in some cases it can beat an MX 150 in certain tests. But even those, people who have an MX 150 know, like, all right, MX 150 is all right, but that is not GTX, even close to GTX, right? This is still miles from being like a gaming laptop, or what I would even recommend if you were doing a lot of video editing. I mean, I would definitely not recommend this laptop.
Yeah, because I mean, I've seen the benchmarks, and the numbers don't lie. The GPU is better than any Intel integrated graphics, and is sort of up there with the MX 150. However, in real world usage, I've seen people trying to edit video in Premiere Pro, for example, and the AMD, the 15-inch Surface laptop is falling behind even the Surface Pro 6 in some tests, which it must be a driver issue, right? There's no way the Vega 9 in real world usage is just that bad.
They tell you, I mean, from what I've read, is some software isn't optimized. It comes down to like the driver support you're saying.
But if that's the case, and it sounds like it might be an Adobe issue more than Microsoft or Windows or AMD, but in that case, Adobe might not fix that problem, and as such, this device isn't good for you if you're a video editor. You can't buy it.
Yeah, and then it's like, battery life wasn't that great. For me, it wasn't the actual use of battery life. I mean, estimates are around for real use is like 6 hours, people are saying on this, which isn't great. Part of that problem is the fact that the 15-inch uses the same size battery as the 13.5-inch. That's why it only weighs like
that's ridiculous.
That's why it weighs a half pound heavier than the 13-inch. And to its credit, for a 15-inch laptop that's all metal, it's very light for its class.
I would have been happy with more weight for more battery life, if I'm honest.
Yeah, and the fact is the AMD Ryzen, and it uses DDR4 RAM, which we'll talk about, but not DDR4X RAM. So the power consumption, I didn't so much mind the actual usage of battery life. My issue was I'd close that lid at nighttime, go to sleep, and I'd wake up and it would be 20% drop. I can't deal with that. I mean, you leave this laptop, on the side for 2 or 3 days and your battery's dead, right? To me, especially because my Surface Pro, meanwhile, was dropping like 4%. I was like, okay, what's going on here? So part of that is just AMD stuff draws more power. And it's to AMD's credit, these are older chipsets, right? These aren't their cutting edge stuff. Their cutting edge stuff is Zen 2, which comes out next year. But I don't care about Zen 2 right now. I'm looking at the Laptop 3. And so the Laptop 3's power draw is pretty significant, and the performance isn't great.
So it doesn't have the instant on stuff either, right? Like the Intel 10th gen does.
Yeah, so they get the improvements from an improved Windows Hello experience, because that is very fast there. So if you're using a laptop in and out, right? You close it, you go to the coffee shop and you open it up. Like it's fast. It's gonna be as fast as any other thing out there. But it does hibernate more, which is the behavior most laptop users are accustomed to. After a couple hours, you'll open that lid, you'll get the logo and the little spinny dots. It still goes pretty fast. It's probably one of the faster versions of that, but it's not quite the instant on. And that's because I think that's tied to Intel's 10th gen platform. But the Wi-Fi 6, which is weird, it has Wi-Fi 5. They're using an older Qualcomm Athros chip. Why? I don't know. Obviously, no Thunderbolt 3. Now, for me, Thunderbolt 3 starts to make more. I think in the 15-inch range, I start to get a little more angry if I have Thunderbolt 3. like for Surface Pro, I kind of don't care. Again, if it had it, I'm not complaining. But if it doesn't bother me. 15-inch though starts to become this like serious work machine, right? Or that's how you start
I
to
agree.
view it. And that's where like Thunderbolt 3. So no Thunderbolt 3. And this is non-AMD stuff now I'm talking about. This is like, it's a bigger laptop. They use the same size battery though as the 13. Why couldn't they add more ports? A second Type C? Is that too much? Or crazy idea. I don't know. An SD card slot. I mean, I think it was thick enough they could have squeezed one in there. But like
Yeah,
that's what
because
people want to use 15-inch laptops for, right?
I'm curious, what does the inside of this device look like? Because if it has the same size battery as the 13-inch, and I assume the sort of same size motherboard and all that stuff, what's the extra space being used for? It must just be air, right? This is like,
I don't
thermals.
know. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I should probably pop it
There
open
should
and
be way
see.
more. There's so much room in there for that. You could fit another laptop in there. That's
Yeah,
not,
I mean, I'm sure they're concerned with thermals a bit, which by the way, it's a pretty cool laptop,
yeah.
right?
It
It
does get
does get
loud though. The Intel i7 that I've got, the fans do spin up when they need to though.
sure. Yep,
Yeah.
yep, that's true too. But that bothered me. Then throwing in the display stuff I just said about the Pro, that applies here to laptop too. The color accuracy was even worse on there. Laptop, laptop's display has always been a little bit worse than the Pro series. They do have enhanced mode this year, which is cool, as well as sRGB, which is kind of nice.
Mm.
But I also had issues with the fact that it's so big now, and with the metal deck. If I wear a watch when I go to type, I got my band scraping against the metal deck, and like this is aluminum, right? It's going to scratch pretty easily. So I felt I had to. So basically, anytime I really want to go typing, I had to like take my watches off, and like that was a little bit of annoying. Whereas if
Yeah.
it had Alcantara, I wouldn't have had that issue. But I think technically it was a smart decision not to use Alcantara on this. I would have liked an option.
Hmm.
Man, I'll tell you, I am biased towards Alcantara because
Yeah,
for
you
me,
really
that's what
like it. I'm not a huge fan. I like
I
the
get it.
idea of it, but if humans weren't gross, I would love it. But humans
Sure.
are gross, so I don't like it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it was really good they made it an option for the 13-inch because when people bring up the criticism, I'm like, no, you're right. But
Mm.
then all I can say is, but I really, really like it.
No,
Like,
yeah, that's totally.
it's like to me, it's what makes this laptop really different from anything else. When I put my hands on that, it's like, oh, it's so nice and soft.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the good things.
Well, wait, real quick. Before we get
Yep.
to the good things, I just want to quickly hang on the AMD stuff a little bit longer. So we reviewed the AMD Ryzen 5 version, right, with the Vega 9.
Yeah.
Microsoft didn't send out the Ryzen 7 with the Vega 11 for review, unfortunately. But are we expecting the Ryzen 7 with Vega 11 to be much of an improvement over the Ryzen 5? Can the Ryzen 7 compete with the 10th gen chips, for example? Or is that still
I,
not there?
I mean, I look at it as this way. I think the Ryzen 7 chip for CPU will probably compete again with the 8th gen Core i7,
Sure.
right? So I think that's how it is. The Vega 11 is supposed to be more powerful. But again, expectation. This is not like a GTX 1650 or even a 25 watt MX 150. Maybe it is. Maybe it's closer to that. But then you throw in the battery life issue and all this
Yeah.
already. It's like,
The SSDs not being as fast.
yeah. We've seen some of the SSDs and the AMD laptops ship with SK Hynix, and they're faster than Surface laptops to SSD was, so that's good. They are an improvement there with decent read speeds, but the write speeds are kind of slow. But this will segue into our Intel versions of these laptops. Some of them are shipping with a new Toshiba BG4 SSD, which just came out, and it's actually pretty fast.
Yeah.
And it doubles the write speeds sequential. I got to pull out the numbers for random, but it doubles the write speeds. So that's pretty big. There's just too many trade-offs with the AMD one. Meanwhile, they do sell an Intel version of this. It's business edition.
Mm-hmm.
It sounded like it was only direct consumer or direct channel sales. They had to go through like a partner, but Microsoft is selling it directly online. You can go buy it. I found out the Microsoft physical stores have them in stock. You can just walk into a Microsoft store and be like, "I'd like this laptop with Intel," and they'll go to the back and get it for you.
Same here for the UK as well. When you order the business model, it's like, oh, collect at the Microsoft store because they just have
Yeah.
them now, which is pretty nice.
Yeah, and that's not for this laptop. They apparently are just carrying business SKUs in the stores now because my friend works in IT. He works with the Microsoft store. He can go there and he can get him stuff for the business. But all that is it's $100 more for the Intel version. And with that, you're going to get the Instant On, you're going to get Wi-Fi 6, you're going to get the a faster 10th gen CPU. The GPU won't be as fast, but again, we're talking, these are I would not like the trade-offs for the AMD with the G. It's not like the GPU. If the GPU is a 1650 or something like that, I'd be like, okay, that's interesting. But the differences between the performance on this is so minimal. Like, and people are complaining that the 15-inch AMD couldn't play 4K YouTube properly.
I think that might be just an Edge issue because a lot of the reviews are using old Edge, which just was never good with YouTube anyway.
I don't know. I would guess a lot of these major sites were actually probably installing Chrome right away.
I would hope so,
because that's usually what people do. I mean, I don't think if you work for like Engadget or something like that, you're probably not using Edge.
That's got to be a driver issue. That can't be its intended design. That's crazy. If it's lagging in like Gmail and stuff, that's bad for a $1,000 laptop.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know. There's some issues there. But yeah, the Intel version
has no issues. It's perfect.
Yeah. Now the Intel version is like it seems to be the one to get. I feel bad saying that. It's not that I want a listen, it just had Zen 2 Ryzen in there, and it was like I want that. I want the competition out there. I want them to compete with Intel in price. But listen, if you're a fan of AMD, you should not be out there saying this is awesome and this is the best thing ever. You should want AMD to put their best foot forward. This is not that. I know they're capable of more. I know in 2020 they're going to have supposedly awesome stuff. This is not that. And if you're a fan of AMD, you should be like, accept the fact, and this is constructive criticism for them, right? But you should want them to put their best foot forward. This is not it. Mm-hmm. Maybe it will be next year, and we'll come back. And that's what I told Microsoft. I was just like, this idea is fine. I like the idea of laptop 315, but it needs something different from the 13-inch. Because right now, the difference between the 13 inches, it's bigger and gets a little bit, in my opinion, too big because of the 3:2 aspect ratio. It starts to get a little weird at this stage, but that's me. But other than that, it's an Ultrabook. It's a straight out 13-inch Ultrabook with a bigger chassis. That's all this is. Yeah. There's no extra GPU that's going to allow you to do Adobe and 4K video. Like, you're not doing this on that laptop. That's all it is. And if you're fine with that, you're going into like, that's all I want. I just want
a bigger screen,
a bigger version with then get it, and be happy with it. But I feel like a lot of people felt this was going to be more.
So we were having a discussion on Sunday about the AMD versus Intel on the Surface laptop, because I had the AMD version, the Ryzen 7 edition pre-ordered originally, but after talking with you on Sunday, I cancelled my pre-order and ordered the business version instead. And I do not regret that decision one bit. Like the Instant On with the Intel 10th Gen on the Surface Laptop 3 is amazing. You sort of lift the lid, and by the time you're done lifting it, it's already on and looking for your face. It's fantastic. The battery life on the Surface Laptop 3 15-inch that I have with the Intel Core i7, haven't got any complaints with it so far. It also does it doesn't drain battery whilst it's sleeping as much. I think for mine it's been about 3 or 4% overnight, which I think Dan can confirm on his Intel version as well. Compared to the AMD, which is 20% overnight, that's a huge difference, right? And also like the faster SSD and just the better performance from the CPU itself. I think the 15-inch Intel version is fantastic. I don't think I have any complaints with it. Even because I know, Dan, you had some complaints about the speakers on the metal versions anyway, being slightly less good compared to the Alcantara versions.
Yeah, this is a little weird. So, but I mean, this is, in my opinion, a fact. At least the unit I tested, right? Mm-hmm. So I have Surface Laptop 2. I opened it up in the new Surface Laptop 3 15-inch. I opened up Interstellar during a great scene where they're trying to dock to the space station that's spinning around. Oh, what an amazing scene. I love that movie so much. But the music is just blaring at that scene. Yeah. It sounds really good. So I synced them both up to that scene, and I would play them both, and I would mute and unmute and listen to each one. And let's put this into context. The 15 sound is actually pretty good for what it is, because don't forget, it's omnisonic speakers. They come through the keyboard. It's pretty loud. I mean, it's actually, they are loud. Anything over 50, you start to get loud in my opinion. But then as soon as you start going over to 60 and higher, you start to get rattle distortions
Right.
from not a lot, but it's enough. You hear it every once in a while,
Hmm.
a little. Uh, but just the overall sound profile to me was muddied compared to the laptop 2. So when people would talk, it was much more clear for me on the laptop 2 than laptop 3. Now, I don't know if that's a design thing. I don't know if that was a change in the speakers. And I also don't know if that was Alcantara playing a role in this. So when they originally talked about those speakers, they talked about how the fabric and kind of, I thought they said kind of plays a role in how this acoustics work, which if you look at how a speaker works, they have membranes in them. There's some like interesting analogies there. I don't know if it was that or because of the metal. I don't know what it is. All I know is I didn't enjoy the sound as much on the 15. It sounds muddy to me and not as clear as the laptop 2. And I did them side by side. I tried music and all this kind of stuff, and I feel very strongly in that, at least the units I tested, about stating that. But if you're just using in isolation, you probably think it sounds okay. You probably think, I just wish they had some kind of tuning software where you can adjust the curves, but they don't. It's all set out of the box. So.
What about the 13-inch? Because you've now got the 13-inch in as well, don't you?
Yeah, so I picked up the 13-inch Core i5, 256, 8 gigabytes. So this is the same configuration as the 15-inch that they sent us with AMD. I like it a lot. So now I know this is where people go, of course it's Intel, but no, it's one I mentioned earlier, it's the Alcantara. I'm a big fan of the Alcantara, which interestingly enough, I got the platinum gray, which Zach insisted I get. But
It's
there's
the
good
best
reasons.
color.
But there's good reasons to get the platinum. One, being that's the natural color of the aluminum. If you were to scratch it, it's a lot harder to notice. If you scratch cobalt and you scratch, you're going to just have a silver line. So you have a blue laptop with a silver line. It'll destroy your heart if you see it happen. You have to be very careful with these laptops. Platinum will be a little bit more resistant. But what's cool is the Alcantara on the inside, the gray, is now like a charcoal gray. They actually made it darker. And if you go look at my hands-on or again my Instagram at Daniel_Rubino, you'll see I compare it to the last gen. And it's significantly darker. And it looks better because you get better contrast with the keys, which are also dark. But because of the white lettering on them, it just looks better. But as many of you could probably figure out, the darker color probably also hides dirt a lot
Yeah.
better.
That's the,
Because that was
that's
always
the
the issue.
primary reason why they've done this. There's no way there's any
Yes.
other reason.
Oh yeah, of course, of course. Yeah, because the cobalt version actually stays pretty clean looking. Same with the burgundy, but it was always the platinum. The one you always saw photos of the internet just had brown stains on it, right?
So
Uh,
gross.
yeah, no, now I'm not saying this won't happen here, but it'll definitely hide it better.
It might
So
take longer to it to actually show as
right,
well, and that's a nice improvement, but it's still not enough. That's why the metal version exists, and that's why I got that one.
yeah, yeah. And now I spent 30 minutes in the store choosing between sandstone,
Did you
platinum, and
really?
cobalt. Oh yeah, I was chatting with the Microsoft guys anyway there, so it was fun. But I was just like, damn, I don't know. Like, I'll be honest. So my big complaint with the 15 was being metal. It was too big, and so I had to take my watch off. I didn't really have that issue with the 13s. The
Right.
size is just kind of perfect where my palms are at the edge. So I was like, oh, so now sandstone became a legit option. And the reviewer in me was saying get the sandstone because this is what people are going to want to see.
Hmm.
Um, but I knew I wanted this laptop. I didn't want just to use this and put it to the side. I wanted something I wanted to use,
Yeah.
and that's the Alcantara. So I ended up going with the platinum. And even when the guy was like, "You sure?" Like, but you have to January 31st to return these devices if you don't like
Oh,
them.
really?
So,
More than 30
yep,
days. Wow. Okay.
yep. So keep that in mind. So I could actually return it and get a different color. But I'm very happy with it. Performance, very good. Slightly different processor than the Pro 7's i5. It's a G7 versus a G5 of the Core i5.
What's the difference for those who don't know?
Slightly higher base clock rate.
Okay.
It's 1.2 gigahertz versus 1.10, but it also has a slightly bigger GPU on it. It's 64 execution units versus 48. Does that matter? Totally not a lot. The benchmarks you'll see a slight difference, but it's just nice to have. So slightly bigger Iris Plus, which is cool. You also, by the way, get that same bigger GPU in the Surface Pro 7's i7 model, which is nice. Battery life has been great. Instant on, love it. Keyboard is great, still quiet, feels great. The trackpad, we all know this. If you don't, but I'll restate it. It's 20% bigger this year. It was 20% bigger on the laptop 15 too. Well, we never had a laptop 15, so nothing to compare it to. Seeing it on the 13-inch though, it's huge. It's not weird Apple huge, but it's massive. It feels awesome. But they also changed it. The laptop 2s and laptop 1s would click loudly when you press it. Just like the Pro type cover. It'd be snap, snap. This is soft and quiet.
It's a soft click, right? It's really hard to describe, but it's because soft click usually doesn't sound great. Oh, it's soft. No one wants like a mushy click, but it's not mushy. It's still satisfying. It's a satisfying.
It's a chef's kiss.
Oh. Yeah, it really is.
That's the only way I can explain it.
It's very nice. It is nice.
It's a really nice trackpad, and I know that sounds dumb for me to harp on it, but when you use a laptop, you're using that trackpad the whole time.
Yeah.
This is what I talk about when I do laptop reviews, the fundamentals. I need trackpad, the keyboard, the display, and then the audio. If those things all come together and work nicely, then the other stuff is sort of peripheral. We can debate about it. But if you nail those things, that's what makes a good laptop, because now I want to use it. And the audio has been excellent. The audio, it's exactly, as far as I can tell, the same as laptop 2s. Mm-hmm. So I don't have the same complaints as I did with the 15-inch. So I don't know if the Sandstone version without Alcantara would sound different. That's one reason I would have bought it, but then I don't want to buy it and be like, oh, it is worse. Now I don't have Alcantara and worse sound. So I know the reviewer of me should have done that, but folks, I want to use this thing, so sorry. Yeah. But it's been great so far. The Type-C is awesome. Same benefits there, power charging and all that stuff.
Same fast charging as well. I love the fast charging. It's so good.
Yeah, it really, because you can plug it in for 15, 20 minutes and gain like 20% back.
Maybe that's why the battery life on this gen isn't as good, because they see that the fast charging is sort of there to sort of just top you up whenever you need it.
Yeah, man, Google did that route too, right?
Hasn't paid off for them. So I guess, is it fair to say we recommend the Surface Laptop 3 if you're getting an Intel variant?
Yeah, I think I hate to do that. I know because I know Microsoft has this partnership with AMD and they want things to work out. But listen, I'm open to AMD, and this is nothing about their desktop or servers. You guys want to tell me they kick butt on gaming? Okay, I can see that, but I want laptops. I would recommend the Intel version here.
At least for this gen.
This gen.
Yeah.
Next year, laptop 4, 15, new AMD. Oh, I'm there. Listen. Why would I not want AMD to do well here? If they can give me a product that's better and faster and it does cooler stuff, like why would I not want that? Yeah. That's why I don't get when people are like, "You're just pro Intel." Like, really? No, I want the best product.
I'm pro whatever's best, and this year it's Intel.
I don't care who the label is, and like, why would I? I don't have stock in Intel. I don't have stock in AMD. I don't have stock in any of these companies. So like, don't care at all. Just give me the best thing. The Ryzen's in Vegas aren't doing it for me. And if that bothers you, too bad. I'm using this laptop, and that's how I feel about it. And I also mentioned, you get Wi-Fi 6. I know some people are saying, this is why I don't get the apologist stuff here. It's like, but Wi-Fi 6 is going to take forever to implement.
Okay, but you will have it when it eventually is everywhere.
Like, some people are going to keep these things for 3-4 years. Like, that's a crappy thing to say. I'm sorry. Yeah. Especially when all the other laptops have it. Every laptop that's coming out right now has Wi-Fi 6. And you want to sit back and be like, well, I don't really need it because my router, like, yeah, but that's still a negative. Just like the Thunderbolt 3 thing. I don't use Thunderbolt 3 in the Surface Pro 7. I still list it as a negative because I get it. But Pro 6 is just, those chipsets are also a little bit more optimized for battery life. It's a newer chipset. The one that ships with the AMD, the Qualcomm Atheros, is 4 years old. Are you telling me that technology from 4 years ago is somehow going to be as good and power efficient as a brand new 2019 Intel AX201? Get out of here. Come on. You guys know this stuff. You're smarter than that. So don't apologize for them on this stuff. I don't know why they didn't use Wi-Fi 6. Maybe it was to bring down the price. And that's the only thing you can say about the Surface Laptop 15 with AMD is it starts at $1,200. Yeah. That's a great price. But, I mean, Surface has never been about bargains. We don't sit here and talk about the best value. Oh, go get a Surface. No, we have tons of articles going, oh, you want a Surface, can't afford it? Here are like 5 other ones, right? Yeah. So I find that argument a little bit weird. But it's a point, if you really want a 15-inch Surface laptop for $1,200.
Yeah, I think for me, I recommend the Intel version of the 15-inch if you want to go down the business route. I don't. So I did buy the business model. There's not too many differences I can see between me being a consumer and buying the business model. The only real differences I've seen so far is that the business models come in sort of unbranded packaging. It's just like a sort of not grey, like brown cardboard box that you open and the device is there. So it's a less of a fancy unboxing experience. But that's not a huge deal. You still get you for the performance improvements. I think the crappy unboxing experience is fine. And also it's a little bit more money, although technically not really. So my original pre-order for the AMD Ryzen 7 with Vega 11 was around £2,000 something in the UK. But that was with a 512 gig SSD. The weird thing is the consumers get less of a choice between configuration options. They're sort of set in stone and you don't get to customize them. So I couldn't get a Ryzen 7 with 256 gigs, for example. With the Intel side of things, I could get the 15-inch with 16 gigs of RAM, Intel Core i7, with 256 gigs of storage, and that was actually £400 cheaper than the original AMD pre-order that I had, because I don't need 512 gigs. 256 gigs is more than fine, except you don't get that option if you want the top-end processor with the AMD for some reason. So it depends what configuration you want, but you might be able to get the Intel one for cheaper if you aren't too bothered about having the most storage, which I'm not. I know a lot of people are like, oh no, 512 gigs is minimum for me, in which case then you will be paying more money for the Intel version. But if you are happy with 256, you're actually going to get a few $100 off, which is nice as well.
Yeah, my recommendation for most of these devices is Core i5, 8 gig 256. Like I actually do find
you don't not 16.
Well, other Core 5s you can't get 16 gigs.
Oh, you can't? Okay, interesting.
Yeah, that's a kicker. I don't like that, but because I know a lot of people are like, I need 16, and I think some of them you need to go to Core i7 for that, which is kind of lame. But they're constrained by. They make the SKUs that people tend to buy most. Microsoft, to their credit, Microsoft sends the Core i5, that model, which is not there. So I bring that up because most companies like HP will be like, hey, you want to review our new laptop? Yeah, sure. And they send me like Core i7, a terabyte of SSD, 32 gigs of RAM. I'm going to be like, oh, this thing's fast. It's like, well, most people won't buy that. And they should point out, too, the SSDs, due to the parallel nature of an SSD, 256 is slower than 512, which is slower than one terabyte, because they run of the dual parity of how the chip is designed. So review companies or OEMs, benefit. They send you a terabyte because it's going to be really fast. But most people aren't going to buy a terabyte. Right. But yeah, that Core i5, that's what I use. I'm happy with it.
So. Yeah. Some other differences between the business model and the consumer model. It comes with Windows 10 Pro instead of Windows 10 Home. That's a minor thing. I don't think most people will care about the differences there. But if you do, you can look up the differences between Home and Pro. It's all sort of enterprisey domain-related stuff. And there's also something called advanced warranty exchange as well. So business models of Surface laptops have this thing where if your device has a problem and you need to send it in for repair, what you can do is that you can tell Microsoft that, hey, I need to send this in for repair. And what Microsoft will do is they'll just send you a brand new one, and then you send your one back in the box that they send you the new one in. So that's really nice. That's great for businesses who need these devices for work and stuff. Yeah. But, they can't have any downtime by not having a device. So Microsoft will just send them a brand new one. Then you get the new one, you unbox it, then you put your broken one in the box, and then you send it back to them, and you get to keep the new one. That's specific to business versions of Surface, and I think that's really nice. And since I've got a business version now, I can actually, do that warranty exchange and get a new one when I have a broken one here, which is really nice. Consumers have to send theirs in and wait a few weeks for the new one to come back.
That's a good point, too. We should mention that we didn't talk about that these are technically somewhat repairable.
Yes.
Big change this year. You can pull off the little feet and you can then unscrew a little Torx screwdriver and remove 4 screws. And then the keyboard deck is stuck on magnetically instead of glued, and it pops off. I haven't done this myself yet, but I may. And then you can see the insides and gawk at technology. But what you can actually do is replace the SSD drive. It's I believe an M2. It's a smaller one, not the chewing stick gum SSDs. Now the question is, Microsoft saying they could replace. It's to replace it. In other words, if you're a business and something fails, like they can replace it. The question you all have is, can I upgrade it? Microsoft's official position is no. The unofficial position seems to be, because we don't really know yet, is you can, right? Right? Why wouldn't you be able to? We don't think there's anything particular about the drive or a firmware that would, or something like on Xbox where there's like some preloaded
Yeah.
BIOS there that's preventing it. So it doesn't seem to be the case. The issue, though, is these ball grid SSDs, these smaller M2 ones, a little bit harder to find. Now, and the high performing ones, sometimes you have to buy in bulk. They're not really as direct sales as like an SSD is, the longer version. So it's more about an issue of trying to get them. Microsoft stores won't upgrade you. So if you do buy a 256 and you go in and like give me a terabyte one, they won't do that. If now the question about warranty is really interesting. It doesn't seem to void your warranty to open it up. Like that doesn't seem to be an issue. Where the warranty can be voided, I was told, is if you swap out the SSD and like you put a different version in there and it breaks and you go back to the store and like it's broken, like then it's an issue. How you solve this is you just keep the original SSD. They're going to need that apparently, and that's where like we'll put back your warranty. So then if you just sneak that one back in and switch it back, you should be okay. I would confirm with Microsoft. That's what I was told in Microsoft store. So, but they're pretty lenient on this stuff. They're not really like, oh, did you even you peeked under the cover? No warranty. I don't think there aren't stickers that tear or anything like that. So you should be okay. But it's a cool feature. Again, mostly for businesses who need that kind of thing. But
yeah, it's a big upgrade because iFixit gave the Surface Laptop 1 and 2 a 0 out of 10 on the repairability score.
Yeah,
This one got a 5, so that's quite the jump.
unfortunately, the battery is glued. Down.
That's weird.
Unfortunate. So you can't really replace the battery. It's going to be a lot of effort.
And also the CPU and RAM are soldered, so you can't change those either.
Yeah, so it's really the drive. But or they can replace the keyboard deck. And I think they can replace the display easily too.
And you can also, I believe the headphone jack and the Surface Connect port are modular. So if your Surface Connect port dies for whatever reason, you can just get a new one and stick it in there. Good
point. Yep. So that's all good. But so those are our. I'll do a more full review of the Laptop 3 13-inch. You guys can leave me questions on my Instagram or that article if you have any about that device. But I'll be doing a more thorough. I already put some preliminary benchmarks up and stuff like that.
I'll probably do one on the 15-inch that I've got of the i7. It won't be a full review because we don't need to do one. But I'll have like some of my thoughts and sort of whatever else next week as well.
Yep. So that's that. Do we have anything else?
No, I think that's it. I think that was a pretty full podcast.
Yeah, hour and almost 20 minutes. Not too bad. All right. I think that will do it for us. Now, if you're wondering, as I mentioned earlier, about the Pro X, don't have it in yet, are expecting it in soon. I can't tell you when I get it in because then I'll be under NDA. But it goes on sale November 5th. I presume we'll probably have a review up November 4th. Hopefully, fingers crossed. I'm very excited about this device. Of course, I'll be doing a versus the Pro. I know there are so many people I hear like, I want the Pro X, but I need the Pro 7. And what about this 64-bit thing? And I'll try to answer all that stuff. I think, it's going to be real interesting about the performance. I mean, it's a mystery box to me as well. So, but look forward to that. I still have a bunch of other laptops to review too, including apparently the XPS 13. I still want to review the NV13T HP. HP NV13T is going down as my best budget laptop. This is a budget laptop that I would personally use. Like I like it that much. It's just a really, really nice device. I think it starts at $750, but it's super wild. It's got really good audio, nice display, excellent keyboard, and a really nifty design. I'm going to try to finish that review soon as well. But other than that, follow me on Instagram or Twitter, Daniel_Rubino. It's Rubino. You can follow Zach at ZACBOWDEN. Leave us questions or comments there. And if you're listening to this recorded, unfortunately, this is where the podcast ends. We do record it live every Friday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time on mixer.com/Windows Central. We're also on YouTube at our Windows Central page there. And you can leave comments and talk to us during the broadcast. And also at the end of the podcast, we take questions and answers, but we won't be doing that for the recorded portion. So join us live if you ever want to ask us anything. We'll be more than happy to help you. Otherwise, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. Take care, everyone.
Nice. So yeah, we'll hang around for questions for the next 10 or 15 minutes, if you have any, of course. I know there's been a lot of questions about. So yeah, someone's talking about your Surface Studio 2 review. I think it was pretty universal that the Surface Studio, it not having the latest gen or the current gen specs is not a good thing. I'm pretty sure that's the thing every reviewer mentioned, because it was the same problem with the Surface Studio 1. The Surface Studio 1 was basically a laptop tier processor, right? And that's not amazing, and it was very evident and whatnot, and it was one of the problems with the Surface Studio 1. And the Surface Studio 2 just launched with the 7th gen, right? Like at the time, 8th gen was the thing, but it launched with the 7th gen CPU.
And I remember, for me, it was a little bit beside the point, because the reason you buy the Studio 2 is the display. That's where all the money goes
That's
to.
That's true, yes.
I'm going to say 2/3 the cost of that device is the display. That's where all the tech is. And in order to bring down costs, they did have to. I mean, it's already absurdly expensive, you can argue, and to bring down costs. But you're not buying this thing. I game on it. Like, it plays games very well, because it's the GPU that matters most on that device, because it actually has a good GPU on there. And that's what you're going to use for these big, heavy CAD programs and 3D rendering, or if you're going to video game. Because if a laptop has like an okay CPU, but its GPU is just like totally kick-ass, you can game on that. That's why you can take a 13-inch Ultrabook with a 15-watt processor and use an external GPU if it has Thunderbolt 3, and you can play video games like, and that's connected to like a 1070 or something like that. Man, you can play some really high-end video games with 60 frames per second, no issue. The bottleneck is not the processor. The processor is not actually the bottleneck for a lot of gaming or 3D intensive stuff. It's the GPU. But if you give them a good GPU, it's an awesome experience. I still use a Surface Studio. It's got the big plate there, and Zach will acknowledge this. The real performance bottleneck on Surface Studio 2 wasn't the processor. It was the SSD. It was the lack of one. Yeah, the old one had a hard drive. Once they went to a solid state drive, all that went away. You combine that with an awesome GPU. The experience is actually really good. Would it have been better with a newer processor? Yeah, maybe. But you're not really talking much. It's like saying how the difference between the Whiskey Lake and the other versions of Whiskey Lake that came out, because there's like 3 versions of it, and Coffee Lake and all that. Yeah, you got a small little performance bump. Was it worth going buy a new device for it? No, absolutely not. So that's my position on that stuff.
So Knight Rider's saying, the issue is how much of a big deal the performance has Wi-Fi differences in a thin and light. So he's comparing the AMD versus the Intel and the Laptop 3, and then comparing it to what we were saying about the Studio 2 and it having, worse specs than other desktop class devices. Difference is the Surface Studio is in a league of its own. It didn't have another version that had a better or worse processor. The laptop does. The Surface Laptop 3 15-inch of AMD isn't as good as the Surface Laptop 3 15-inch of Intel Core i7 or the 13-inch of Intel Core i7, for example. It's just not... Or i5, just the Intel chips in general. There is a better version of the Surface laptop if you're getting the Intel version over the AMD version. There wasn't that distinction to be made with the Surface Studio. The Surface Studio was it. It was its own device. There still really isn't a competitor to it today, because like Dan said, the Surface Studio is a display. That's why you buy it. It's for the display. The specs come next. And the 7th gen processor wasn't amazing in the Surface Studio, but it wasn't terrible either. It was still a good processor for the time, and it does the job for what the Surface Studio 2 is. Whereas, the AMD processor of the Surface Laptop 3 15-inch actually isn't doing what it's supposed to do. Reviewers haven't been able to edit video in Adobe Premiere Pro. The battery life hasn't been amazing. 20% drop overnight is not acceptable, unfortunately. There's a lot of issues with the AMD 15. Some of that may be fixed in firmware, but we can't review on what ifs. We have to review on what is in front of us. Microsoft never said, oh, by the way, this is preliminary firmware. We're going to be releasing updates that improve all of this, and this. No, they shipped those review units to us and said, this is the device consumers will be buying. And that's what we reviewed.
Yeah, I mean, Surface Studio is a really weird device too, because it's a professional tool. Right. Yeah. So you really need to, like, the real bar for it is, like, if you talk to 3D artists and renderers and graphics people who are using it, like, asking them, like, is this thing terrible because of the CPU? Does it prevent you from doing your job? And as far as we know, that's not an issue. Now, if you're buying it because you want a high-end gaming PC or, then, yeah, the CPU discussion, I think, definitely becomes much more valid. But this is like getting into a common thing, too, is Dell has their XPS line, but then they also have their business line. which is gear. Like, so they have like an XPS 15, but I forgot what they call it. They have a Latitude version of it. It's the same device, but the internals are using like Quadro graphics and what's the other Intel processor. But the performance is not amazing, like if you're a gamer or something like that. But it's because it's certified for what their job is in terms of running certain software. That's where their benefit is. So these things get weird to review because you want to approach it from like the consumer, like, but it can't do Crisis, But even when I did that review, I was like, listen, I'm not an artist. I'm not technically the target market for this device. And so maybe that sounds
nice
like
they sent you one.
Huh?
It's nice they sent you one though.
Oh yeah, totally. No, it's awesome. Like it's such a fun device to use. But yeah, I just think the 15. I mean, first of all, you have the Intel version and you love it, and so it seems to solve these problems, which is just like, so why not do that? I don't know.
So moving on, are they planning on allowing Project xCloud streaming to an Xbox One S? Sounds weird, but wondering if this would allow Scarlett quality on an older model. I believe, I mean, it's entirely possible, right? Microsoft could release an app on the Xbox One that allows you to stream Scarlett games and whatnot, and I think that will definitely happen. But whether there'll be Scarlett quality, I don't know. It could be like a downscaled version of the Scarlett games because when you're streaming, you don't really need all the detail there because obviously you're streaming it. It's never going to be as high quality as running it natively. But we'll see regarding how that works. I would be surprised if they don't do that. But yeah. Someone's asking, what do you think will change before the Surface Duo launches? I'm assuming hardware-wise. Nothing. If anything, they will add a camera on the back. But outside of that, I'm not expecting anything to change. Those bezels will be there on the final version. The outer shell being glass will be there on the final version. That form factor will more or less be there, just as you've seen it. There's no plans to change it. I've spoken to many people about this. The hardware is basically done. It's all about the software, which is why these devices aren't coming until next year.
Someone's asking, will the Kensington dock work with the Surface Pro 7? Really good question. I haven't tested, but I'm very confident saying yes. I'll follow up on my Instagram with a photo of that because I have that right down here by my feet, actually. That thing is so awesome. But it should. Basically, that's one reason why the design is still the same. Like, I have a UAG case I'm going to review too for the new one that just came out. And it came out before Surface Pro 7, but it fits perfectly. The ports line up and everything. It's almost like these companies, I mean, they know kind of. I almost think that, I wonder like if the Surface team was like one reason they didn't redesign it was because like Kensington has like a lot riding on this dock and it would have like, if they changed it dramatically, it would have kind of killed it, for this generation. And they're like, we just came out with it. Like, come on, let's at least get 2 years. Yeah, so that's an interesting thing, but I'm very confident saying it does work.
Will the Surface Hub 2S be upgraded to the newer Teams OS SKU? If you have a Surface Hub 2S and you order the Surface Hub 2X module, which is a thing that you take out the old 2S module and you plug in the 2X module, then you will get the new Teams OS. It won't be delivered as a software update. You will have to buy the physical module that has the updated internals, but the updated internals for the Surface Hub 2X will have Windows 10X, not Windows 10X, sorry, Windows Core OS, which is Teams OS in this specific configuration, pre-installed. So that's how Surface Hub 2S users can get the new OS by buying the 2X module and plugging it into their 2S. Do you know if there'll be... Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Someone's very excited about the latest HP Spectre X360, wondering when I'll review it. No idea when it'll be. I think it was November was when it was supposed to come out. I do expect HP will be doing a reviewer workshop with us soon on that. I don't have any dates or info. It's going to be a priority device. I think it versus the XPS 13 2-in-1 is just like, that is an awesome match there. I have high hopes for the Spectre. I think it'll do very well. Yeah, very excited. Sometime in November, we'll try to do a quick review on that, right away. So pay attention there. But November is probably a good time.
Do you know if there'll be a Surface Studio 3? I mean, nothing concrete, but we are hearing whispers that there might be a new studio in the spring, alongside a new Surface Book as well. It would be cool if the Xbox Scarlett could have a desktop mode with UWP store apps and the keyboard and mouse support. Would it be possible? On a technical level, it's 100% possible. C-Shell allows that to be a thing. You plug in a keyboard and mouse, the Xbox sees that you've got a keyboard and mouse in there, and adjusts the shell to adapt to a more desktop UX. But who knows if that'll be an actual feature of the next Xbox. We've not heard anything concrete, but C-Shell definitely makes it a possibility.
Are going to have different color variants for Duo and Neo. Don't know. I mean, we've seen them in white. They look
Yeah,
great in white, by the way. They're
yeah.
glass and they hide fingerprints very well. But as Zach will confirm, early prototypes were black.
Hmm.
We don't know if that's because they were prototypes or is that something they were experimenting with. I wouldn't be surprised if it came out the black version. I don't know.
Yeah,
What do you
maybe.
think,
I
Zach?
assume there'll be a platinum and a black, but just like the Surface Pro
I
7.
want burgundy.
Yeah, it'd be
Burgundy
really
with.
nice if they get them in like all of the cool Surface
I
colors.
can't believe they got rid of burgundy this generation.
No one bought it. That's why.
I
Whatever
know,
colors you
but
don't see, it's because no one bought it.
yeah, I know. That's what made me sad. Like, what's wrong with you people? Burgundy was that was the one color I remember. I was like, oh, I hope they don't send me burgundy, and then they did. And I was like, God, I was like, oh, it's gonna swear. But then I opened it, I used it. It's like, actually, I really like burgundy.
Hmm. So will the Surface Hub 2S stay on RS2 forever? As far as I'm aware, yes. The last time this was a while ago, by the way. The last time I asked, yes, the plan was that the Surface Hub would be that OS would be remaining on RS2. However, I saw somewhere recently, I don't know if this was online or someone told me this, that they were planning to upgrade it to version 1809, which is RS5. That's still not Windows Core OS or the OS that'll be running on the Surface Hub 2X, but it will be newer. I don't know what differences will be there though.
What's the best new Surface Pro keyboard color that doesn't show stains easily? Uh, so there's only two new colors, as far as I know. There is ice blue, which I have. I'll be posting a photo of that sometime. It's okay. I would not. Ice blue is boring. And that's fine. If you want conservative and a cover that doesn't draw a lot of attention, it's like a combo of what Cobalt was and Aqua last year, which was a
Hmm.
limited edition color, which I do have. Uh, it's like if you combine those, that's what ice blue looks like. It's a very light blue, almost like a grayish. It's okay looking, but poppy red. I think poppy red not only looks better, I think it'll hide stains better because it's a darker color. Whereas the blue is a little bit closer to you have more whites almost in there. So
Any idea if the Windows 10X launcher will replace the current Start menu on Windows 10 Desktop? We don't know. On a technical level, it runs on Windows 10 Desktop. We've seen it running on Windows 10 Desktop in that leaks build a few months back. But whether or not Microsoft is planning to release it officially is something that I don't have an answer to, unfortunately. I wouldn't be surprised if eventually it comes to desktop. Once Windows 10X takes off and is sort of like the norm, then I could see it coming to Windows 10 desktop as well. Do you think there will be an insider program for Windows 10X once devices with it are released? And is it necessary? I think the answer is yes, and I do think it's necessary. I think it's important for Microsoft to continue testing Windows, even with Windows 10X. So yeah, there'll be an insider program for the 10X stuff.
someone's asking what I think of the iWatch Series 5, and do I think Microsoft will enter the smartwatch realm again? Good questions. Yeah, I got I upgraded to the 44 millimeter, which I always thought was too big. It's not. The Series 5, I'm testing. I still wear my Fitbit in my other watch, which a lot of people, like, that freaks people out apparently on YouTube. Like, why does this guy wear two watches? I'm like, because three would be stupid. That's why. But the Apple Watch Series 5 is really good. It's almost too good. I keep saying this about Apple. Like, the Series 4 changed things for them. That's where they really hit their stride with this technology. And Series 5, I love it a lot. The battery life is actually very good. I go most days. I go 40 to 50% battery. I'll have left at the end of the day. I'm talking a long day, like 18 hours or something. So it's battery life's been great. I have the cellular, the LTE version as well, but that's with cellular off. The display is fantastic. I actually really like their always on display. I leave that on. Um, it's it's freaking awesome. I still think their app launcher is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in the world. I couldn't volunteer to you what's different, but it works very well. I'm loving it. Um, Second part of that question, do I think Microsoft will get in? I wrote an article a week or two ago basically saying after the Duo was announced, like they kind of need a wearable at this point. I think we talked about it even on the podcast, but I think go read the article. It's why I think it's called like something like why after the Samsung Duo announcement they need a smartwatch, because I feel like now they could definitely do one. There are the vision videos they've done where people wear wearables with screens on them, which tells you they're clearly thinking about that. Because those videos, if you go back and look at them, you'll see Surface Dial, you'll see Surface Duos, and you'll see all sorts of tech that they were thinking about years ago is coming true now. I think they need one. Whether they do, I don't know. We haven't heard anything that they are, but I would be very shocked if they're not playing in that space. It's just whether what they can do that would be different. But boy, I really like to see them do that because I don't want to have to wear Google Wear. It's Google Wear is so disappointing, and Google doesn't care about it. That's the thing. Like if Google was updating it every couple months and bringing new features like they were at the Android, I'd be like, all right, let's watch this space. As far as I know, Google's just like, yeah, just letting that thing just, I don't know, not going anywhere.
You mentioned Spotify as a possible Windows 10 X inbox app. Would that be a new PWA UWP or the current clunky election app? We don't know. I will say that the Spotify app they showcased on stage for Windows 10 X was the PWA. So maybe, but we don't know, unfortunately.
If I wanted to charge the Surface Pro 7 with a USB-C, would I need a specific power supply for it? No, but you get what you return, and so you can plug in any Type C charger to this. It'll work. The issue is if you plug in like a smartphone charger and it only has like 10 or 15 watts, that's probably not enough to charge. You could trickle charge the device. I mean, if you turn it off or close the lid and you plug it in and you leave it overnight, you'll get a positive charge. But it won't be a fast charge. You'll need at least a 45-watt Type C charger to, I imagine, use it and charge it at the same time. Don't forget, the Surface Connect is a 65-watt charger. So ideally, you'd get a 65-watt Type C charger as well, or that would give you that fast charge ability, which is really clever. But you can go even higher than that. You can plug it. I have a plug in a 90 watt. I have a 100 watt. You can plug in there too, so that works. And you'll get a little bit faster charging, I think, with those. But there's a limit, right? I think it can only go so fast. I think anything over 65, I don't think it charges any faster. But if you say you get a 90 watt Type C, then you plug it into a Type C hub. And we reviewed a couple of those. We have a best of for these devices. I have one that has a 100-watt pass-through. So you could plug the 90 into that into the Surface. So now you're going to definitely get your 65 watts, but now you have like 30 watts for other things you can plug into that hub, including your smartphone, to charge those at a high rate. So that's how you got to think about this. But the big story is that you can plug anything into it. You'll just get various charging rates.
When will developers get access to Windows 10X? We don't know. Build would be probably a good sort of time frame to keep an eye out for regarding developer access to Windows 10X. But it could be before that, honestly. I mean, we don't have a concrete. I know Microsoft is planning to start sending out Surface Neo devices to select developers early next year. I don't think that will be a thing where you can just sort of buy one for yourself and as an air quotes developer. I think Microsoft will be approaching specific developers and giving them hardware on the down low because they don't want press sort of finding these developers and going, hey, let me play with that. So yeah, if you are a developer who works for a big company or something, you might be getting an email from Microsoft early next year that gives you the chance to have one. But yeah, I don't think they're just going to have them for sale to developers like the HoloLens 1 was.
I should write an article talk about how Google Wear is turning into Google's Windows Phone. Because if you think about it, it's like they have really good hardware. So they're kind of like Nokia's, right? The Fossil 5, I thought, I have it. It's awesome. I think it's really nice hardware. And so their partners are good. But what their partners are given to work with is not good. And Google doesn't seem to care as much as they should, which is weird because I get it. Apple's kind of kicking their butts in this high-end premium market. But I feel like Google's almost there, right? We're just kind of the thing with Windows Phone too. It's like we just need that moment where we can just tip over. Like I feel like Google, like if they did pay attention to it, they could compete there, but they're just not, and it's just stagnating. And so their partners are like, "Here's a brand new thing," and it's like it's not that much better. So I feel like it's Google's Windows Phone almost. They're going to lose this market. It's because they didn't really try hard enough.
Any idea how much the Duo will cost? It not being a foldable screen, I'm hoping it'll be cheaper than anticipated. Well, this is Surface, so whatever you think it's going to cost, add a few $100 more on top of that, at least. Also, although it does have two screens, which technically should be cheaper, I'm pretty sure that hinge mechanism that they're using in there is very complex, and a lot of R&D has gone into that, so that will bump the price up as well. I'm expecting it to be around $1,500 starting I think that's kind of, for what it is, I think that's pretty reasonable.
Speaking of, someone's asking about performance-wise on the Neo. That's the bigger version that runs Intel. So what's the performance going to be on that? We don't know. Because that's a new Lakefield chipset. But Lakefield is supposed to be pretty high-end and powerful. It's a next-gen thing for them. They just announced some news around it. But we don't know. I couldn't give you a ballpark even. I would expect Core i5 levels, what we have today, but I really don't know. It's all kind of new stuff, so it's kind of hard to say. So I was asking about also Microsoft, could they partner with Fitbit? Yeah, I brought this up on Twitter. Someone else had brought that up. Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing like a partnership there. In other words, Microsoft builds the hardware, a lot of the software experience, but then it's powered by like Fitbit's, sports stuff and tracking and all that. I think that'd be a cool idea for both companies. I have little faith that would actually happen because whenever I wish for these kind of things, it almost never happens. But I think that's a cool idea. It would help both companies. I think it would be good selling points because that's what I want. I want the best of Fitbit's community, their know-how on tracking and sleep technology and exercise. But I want Microsoft sort of designed because they would build a really rad looking. It'd probably be something very radically different from what we expect in a wearable, and that's cool. And it'd presumably have a nice screen on it that does something different than like what Apple Watch does or even Google Wear. So, but yeah, these are just hopes and dreams of mine right now. That's all we know.
Do you think Microsoft could ever acquire Spotify? I don't think it's worth it.
Spotify has said publicly, the CEO, they would never sell to an American company.
Because Americans suck. I'm checking.
Yeah, because I guarantee you Amazon would want them, Apple would definitely want them, Google would want them. But they said this is like that Nokia pride. Although Nokia did sell, but a lot of people were upset about that for Finland. But there's Spotify, as far as I know, is not for sale. So no. And I don't think even if it were for sale, Microsoft would buy them. Microsoft's not into that kind of scaling in that business anymore. Nor do I want them to buy Fitbit. I think that'd be a disaster.
Next year's Surface Pro is supposed to be an entirely new design, ? That's the rumor. It'll probably look like the Surface Pro X. Just a slightly thicker version.
Yeah, I think it stands to reason that they would just do that.
Why wouldn't they?
We know, though, they couldn't just take an Intel processor and put it in the Pro X. The Pro X is too thin, doesn't have the thermals for Intel.
Someone up here is harping on about how they think Windows 10 X is better for the Surface Duo than Android because the Duo isn't a phone. Newsflash, the Duo is a phone. It's a new category of phone, but it's still a phone, and as such, phone runs Android. It's as simple as, I know you're saying not everybody wants Snapchat, etc., but it's not just about Snapchat. Windows 10X doesn't have the banking apps people need. It doesn't have those little mobile apps that you just have on your phone. It doesn't have your Trainline app. It doesn't have, your get your whatever. It doesn't have all of the apps that you use on your phone today. I can guarantee it. Unless you're a Windows Phone user, in which case it does. But you're in the minority, and as such, it makes no sense for Windows 10 X to run on the Surface Duo. It's an Android device because Android has the mobile apps. The apps that fit in your pocket is on Android. They're not on Windows, and that's why the Duo runs Android. You don't have to call the Duo a phone if you don't want to, but the Duo fits in your pocket, and Android has apps that run on devices that fit in people's pockets. Windows doesn't.
And with that, I think we're done.
Yes, me too. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back same time next week. That'll be the one before Ignite, so I don't know what will be going on the week after that, but we'll be definitely doing one next week. So yeah, follow us on Twitter, etc., etc. We'll keep you updated on when we're going live and whatnot. But until then, goodbye.